Everyone, this is update for December 27, 2024, day 1038 of the war and of the date of date. Also catch up for December 26 and 25. So I'm going to start with fiscal overview of the situation in the US, and it's really global situation because US is sort of linchpin that's in the center of their world financial system. And then I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. So it might be not very straightforward, but I want to explain some important developments that are happening in the US government debt funding markets and US government debt. It's called US Treasury. So what this really means is the US government through Treasury Department borrows money, and it borrows for, as you can see, different tenures: 1, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and so then 2, 3, basically till 30 years. So that's the tenure of those borrowings, and then this is called the yield curve. Basically, it shows the interest rates for each of the borrowings, for each of the tenure. And the most important part is interplay between the short-term borrowings, which is, you can see, most typical is 3 months, which is related also to the U.S. Central Bank interest rate that is set by U.S. Central Bank, and then 10-year borrowing by U.S. government, which is more of a free market mechanism, at least right now. Sometimes U.S. Central Bank also tries to sort of intervene into this free market mechanism, but generally speaking, this long dated bonds, they typically just a free market mechanism. So in some ways, the short-term borrowings, they're not bonds but borrowings, they are fully controlled by the central bank, and it's true for every country. So this is not just US. But the idea is the following: is that this is controlled by central bank, and I'm not saying this is right. This is how the system works, how system is set up at the moment, and then the long term is more free market. So as you can see, the situation at the beginning of December was that the long term borrowing was actually cheaper than a short-term borrowing, which is, I think it should be kind of counterintuitive for everyone, because the longer you give, for the longer time period you give money to, let's say, government, the bigger is uncertainty that the government will not return the money, and it can be, directly and indirectly. It could be through inflation, for example, the typical way. So in general, the long-term borrowing should be more expensive and should command higher interest rates. This was very unusual situation, and it's been for a while like that. And then situation switched to very different, and this is where we are currently. So as you can see, long-term borrowing went up significantly to slightly above 4.6, and here it was below 4.2. And then the short-term borrowings went down, but that's because U.S. Central Bank reduced interest rate. But the more important part is that long-term borrowing went up, because this is really reflects free market and situation perception of all of the investors and lenders, what they think about the future path or the of the capital, the price of the capital, basically, not only for the US but the rest of the world. And as you can see, the price, the view right now has drastically changed, basically 180 degrees, where the price for the capital went up significantly for the US government, but it also means for the rest of the economy, because borrowing for commercial borrowers, so like real estate, to some extent even sort of like cars and things of that, basically most of the borrowing is tied to this 10-year treasury. So what this really is telling is there is shortage of capital in the US. And then the next sort of, and one of actually, I want to tie it to to what I mentioned before in prior videos, that Japan is, for example, no longer provider of capital to the US because their economic model is broken, at least for right now. Maybe they will figure it out, maybe not. And also that Japanese central bank is telling that they also want to increase interest rates. So they basically saying like, we don't want to provide capital anymore, and they cannot because their economic model is broken. So they themselves don't create economic capital. And at the same time, China, there's big misconception about China that somehow China is providing capital to the US. They have stopped providing capital to the US, I believe, like since the beginning of the Trump administration, or somewhere around that, of the first Trump administration. So they never been provider of large of capital. Well, they did provide some capital in the past, but that was eventually they stopped. And what they did, they started buying actual hard assets, resources around the world. That they decided to, instead of providing capital to the U.S. Because then it goes to U.S. consumer. That's how it works, and then obviously U.S. government. So it's sort of all of the sort of borrowers, typical borrowers. So they decided to buy natural resources, spend that earned capital, the generated capital that they generate through export. They decided instead of to as I stated, to buy around, especially in Africa, they were buying and they continue doing that. Natural resources and acquiring infrastructure and so on. So basically, established sort of kind of like economic empire. Essentially, they are building, and so China was not provider of capital to US in a long time. So this is really big misconception that you may hear in the mass media, that somehow this is borrowings from China. No, this is not borrowings from China. At this time, China actually withdrawing its capital from the US. Basically, that's what they're slowly selling their holdings of the US government debt or US treasuries. So they not provide for a while they have not been provider of capital. So, but the point is that what I want to explain, the two major providers of capital, China, Japan, and also Russia used to be provider of capital, which they don't anymore, and also partially Europe. All of those economic engines, for one or another reason, are not providing capital. And in this case, Russia and China for more political reasons, and I would say economic as well. But Japan and Europe truly for economic reasons, they don't provide any capital. So what this really means is that eventually, this is the first sign, and this is like early warning sign, is that to the U.S. Government that its ability to borrow is going to be sort of reduced severely. I don't know when it's exactly going to happen. Maybe in a year, maybe 2026. But it's this significant increase in the price for capital to borrow money, basically, is the sign that where everything is going, and that investors don't have capital to continue funding ever increasing fiscal deficits of the US government. And related to this, there is interesting development and sort of more related to politics in the US is I mentioned about this fight between incoming and outgoing administration about raising debt limits. So in US, debt limit is going to be frozen as of, I think, January 1st or January 2nd. And essentially, US government will not be able to borrow. So they already sounding alarm that we can survive only till January 14th. So basically, politicians or US Parliament needs to increase that debt limit as soon as possible. And the problem is that the incoming administration was hoping that the debt limit was going to go up, and then they can blame politically all administration on increasing debt limits, and that didn't happen. So now this hand grenade is going to be in the hands of incoming administration. So they will have to increase debt limit, and that will be obviously used against them politically. And so this is sort of a bad situation that they are in politically. But this is more sort of about political fight. But truly is that situation is becoming sort of hand grenade where there is more and more realization that that there will be sort of political responsibility for increasing that, because increasing this debt also increases inflation in the country, and then it also reduces in the bottom line. It reduces standard of living, and that's one of the reasons why Trump got elected, is because standard of living is declining. And so that was natural response to change and replace failed sort of political player with sort of new hope. And we'll see if that's going to play out. I would say hearing what this Doge is talking about, this is just they really discussing more like a pet projects about okay, so there's some kind of 100 million waste here, 500 million or 1 billion waste there, which is absolutely ridiculous waste. There's no question about it, but that will not move the needle. That's a problem. And so if there is no sort of changes to this unsustainable deficits, fiscal deficits in US, then the market will cut it off, will basically slowly but surely restrain. And that's what I'm mentioning, that this increase in the long price or interest rates, because interest rate is a price for capital. And that increase in the price of capital basically saying, okay, we don't have enough for you. You need to learn to reduce your expenses. And that's really what the market general economy is generally stating to the U.S. Government and I would say to the world as well, because it's a very interconnected system. U.S. borrows and spends and buys all sort of products around the world, and then all of these producers are also benefiting because they're exporting and they generating the wealth in their own countries. So this whole system is becoming under tremendous stress and going to be under tremendous stress, and which may lead to very I would say not surprising, but to very negative outcome if there is loss of control over the situation. Now let's move to situation on the battlefield in Ukraine, and I will do walk through in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do, starting from north, and then I'm going to go south. So first situation in the Kursk region of Russia. Nothing no news in terms of changing in the trend. Russian troops slowly, very very slowly, squeezing Ukrainian forces out of the this part of Ukrainian controlled part of Kursk region, and eventually they will succeed in their effort. But it's slowed down significantly. Now let's look at the situation north and northeast of Kharkiv. Things more or less stable. Really, nothing major is happening here. Now let's move to the situation on the North Lugansk front line. Things remain more or less the same, more or less stable. No sort of major territorial losses by Ukrainian forces here. At the same time, Russian troops do slowly but surely, kind of like in a advancing, sort of, I don't know, 500 meters there, 300 meters there, but no major villages were captured by Russian troops so far. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. The northern part is fairly quiet, and it's been like this for quite a while. Not much going on here. Then actually even the southern part is somewhat quiet. I suspect that Russian forces, Russian troops ran out of reserves, ran out of sort of resources to throw into the battle. Maybe there is regrouping. I can sort of speculate, but it's very clear that the thrust, the push is no longer there. I'm not saying there is none, but it's significant. It went down significantly. Now let's look at the situation at central Donbass front line, where things the worst, and even their pressure definitely subsided, especially around Kurakhove area. So basically, from Velyka Novosilka to Kurakhove, pressure pretty much non-existent at this point. Again, I can guess, but it's sort of unclear what's going on. Either Russian command is regrouping and planning something else, or not something else, but because it's very straightforward what it is, what they want to do. Again, I can speculate, and I think we'll see in a due time what the plans are. The only sort of section of the front line where Ukrainian forces, where Russian forces are advancing, is sort of this area from south of Pokrovsk to essentially Novosilka. And let's actually look at that. So this is where it stands. And the advance is actually in this corner. So Russian troops captured village Ukrainka and moved from past Novolenivka, so they are on outskirts on Novoyelizavetivka and also Yasenova. So essentially they jumped from Novolenivka to Novoyelizavetivka and also captured completely Ukrainka and jumped to Yasenova. So far, situation in this sort of very dangerous area between Uspenivka and Volkova, there's no major advances. There is strong Russian pressure and attempts to capture Uspenivka, but so far Ukrainian forces are holding. It doesn't mean that this is any positive sign. I'm not stating that. It's just temporary situation. And it's possible that in the next video I'll by then that this Uspenivka will fall, and Russian troops will continue their advance in sort of this northwestern and western direction. And then also Russian troops managed to improve their situation straight south of Pokrovsk. So they completely took control of Dachenske and advanced to this village Tunisian. So this is not as call it dangerous situation. The most dangerous is this most western part of Russian advance, because it really creates problems with the whole defensive line, um, and so and this is relative to prior to the 24th, so you can see that where the advances are. So mostly it's in this area, Ukrainka and Novosilka. Then situation actually in this Kurakhove area, as I stated, is quiet. Again, don't have any good explanation why it's quiet. I can, as I mentioned, can speculate, but the the plan seems to be the same. So essentially, as you can see, Russian troops trying to advance, capture first of all completely Shevchenko, and advance past it in western direction, and then also from the south they're attacking from kind of north towards Ulakli, north west, and essentially they cut off supply for the troops in this whole area, and the idea is to squeeze Ukrainian forces out. So very straightforward, nothing sort of no breakthrough here, like nothing earth-shattering, but it works very well. This strategy for Russian command. Also, things are quiet for now around Velyka Novosilka, as they are quiet here as well. So we'll see what's going to happen next in this area. Now let's move to situation on the Zaporizhya front line, where things are quiet, nothing really happening here. And then let's finish with the situation along the Dnipro River. No new attempts by Russian troops to establish bridgehead on the western bank of Dnipro River around Kherson. So again, that attempt that I mentioned probably I don't know a week ago, so it's unclear if it was one-off or was part of some kind of bigger plan. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye bye.